I drove uphill to Priddy, and by the side of the road there were piles and piles and piles of ash trees that had all been felled. And it was like seeing bodies by the side of the road. It was really quite shocking. Driving up that hill, I just thought, it needs to be a barrow, it needs to be an ash barrow. I remember Ash Barrow being announced in 2012. It felt a very apocalyptic kind of announcement. This tree, that a ubiquitous tree, and one that's, is hardy and grows in all different environments. It's almost considered a kind of a weed-like tree. Yeah, I really felt a sense of loss hearing that announcement, and a sense of helplessness, I think, at that stage. With a landscape like Mendip, the loss of the ash is a kind of rewriting of that landscape. For me, it always felt like a very visible, tangible example of, ecological loss. It's not a coral reef on the other side of the world or a melting ice cap, but it's a tree that is all around us and is dying all around us. So I really wanted to kind of pay homage to the ash. We need a moment of mourning or an occasion to acknowledge that loss. The project was very much devised as a sort of celebration of the geology of Mendip, but also a eulogy. Having spoken with Jodie Lewis, archaeologist with a specialism in Mendip burial mounds, she explained to me that perhaps the function of a burial mound was a mechanism for reframing communities after loss. So the idea that when somebody dies, that's a time of uncertainty. Maybe the process of building a monument like a burial mound is a way of a community coming together and reframing themselves and working together and building new alliances as a way of processing death and loss. And I just thought that was such a lovely idea to think about in relation to the loss of the ash and bringing people together to process that loss, but also engage with the place and create a lasting memorial to these trees. The history of burial on Mendip is very linked to the fact that it's a limestone landscape. So where you have caves and gorges and swallets, you tend to get cave burials. And interestingly, there seems to be a relationship between caves or swallets and hollows underground and burial mounds above ground, almost like an echo. I came for my first site visit at Deerleap and I saw the barn and the big dying ash tree that's opposite the barn in front of this amazing view over the peat moors and towards the Bristol Channel. One of the first stages of the project was selecting a tree. We chose a tree from scrubland adjoining Deerleap car park. All the ash trees on that site have some level of dieback, and it was felled just ahead of the nesting season. The only way of transporting it to the barn was to carry it, so we had this wonderful moment of almost a kind of funeral-like procession, carrying this tree across the hill and down to the barn. I wanted the tree to be in dialogue with the ash tree that's growing directly in front of the barn, which is an incredible, very old tree that's obviously been in a state of decay for many years, is sort of slowly and gracefully collapsing. But it sits against this amazing view. It's just the most beautiful kind of symbol of all ash trees. There is a huge, long history of lime burning on Mendip. If you look at an old OS map, it's dotted with disused lime burns. The lime process was really, it was a way of acknowledging the geology of Mendip. The limestone landscape of Mendip has this very direct link with death and with memorial. Limestone itself is made from the remains of prehistoric sea creatures And I was thinking a lot about this relationship between the carbon of limestone on Mendip from prehistoric life forms and the carbon that was the ash tree, and carbonising the ash tree, turning it into charcoal and returning it to the earth. Essentially, these processes are all about the carbon cycle and this exchange of carbon through living things. So I really wanted the lime and the charcoal and the tree and us as the viewer to kind of be a way of acknowledging that we're all connected. The process of covering the entire tree with lime, it's quite a tender process. You're almost mapping the entire surface of that tree, almost an embalming process. Looks quite bone-like, looks quite ghostly. And for me, it really felt there was something subterranean about it, coming into a cave and encountering this kind of glowing stone tree. I read a really lovely description of charcoal burning as destructive distillation, and I've always thought that was such a perfect way of thinking about a lot of my work, actually. You know, that tension between destroying a material in order to kind of purify and distill it into something. The charcoal that we ended up with, it was almost like you could fill a coffin with it. It became shrunk down to quite a human scale. You know, it was a lovely kind of unexpected outcome of the process that I hadn't anticipated. I've been thinking about, you know, where does a work like this begin and where does it end? In some ways, it's much more about a process and an evolving process. You know, the Barrow stage of things is a whole other chapter. The tree needs to go back into the ground and become part of the limestone landscape again.